My name is Rachel, and this is the story of how my brother Marcus tried to destroy me, but ended up destroying himself instead. What happened to me is something I never thought could happen in my own family, but it taught me that sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the most devastating betrayal. Let me take you back to where this all started, because understanding the full picture is crucial to understanding just how calculated and cruel my brother's actions really were. Our mom passed away 8 months ago after a grueling 18-month battle with pancreatic cancer. She was only 58 years old, far too young, far too vibrant to be taken from us. Mom was everything to our family, our anchor, our peacekeeper, our voice of reason, and honestly, the only reason Marcus and I had managed to maintain any kind of relationship at all throughout our adult lives. Growing up, Marcus and I were very different. He was 3 years older and always focused on conventional success, good grades, sports, following the rules. I was more creative and willing to take risks. Mom understood our differences and would tell people that Marcus was her steady rock and I was her bright flame. When Mom got her cancer diagnosis, I was living in Portland, running a successful freelance graphic design business. I dropped everything, sublet my apartment, said goodbye to my clients, and moved back to Cedar Falls to care for her. Marcus, meanwhile, continued his normal life 20 minutes away, visiting on weekends and handling what he called the business side, insurance, finances, and medical decisions. At the time, I thought we were both contributing. I was the hands-on caregiver while Marcus handled the overwhelming paperwork. But looking back, I realized Marcus was positioning himself as the responsible one who could be trusted with important decisions, building a narrative that would serve him well after Mom was gone. Mom left behind the family house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style place in the older part of Cedar Falls where we had both grown up. The house was not fancy, but it was paid for except for a small mortgage Mom had taken out a few years earlier to update the kitchen and bathrooms. The house held so many memories: birthday parties in the backyard, Christmas mornings around the tree in the living room, family dinners around the kitchen table where Mom would referee our childhood arguments. More than the memories, though, that house represented the only tangible connection Marcus and I had left to our mother and to each other. It was our inheritance, yes, but it was also supposed to be our bridge to maintaining some kind of family relationship even after she was gone. After the funeral, Marcus and I had what I thought was a mature conversation about the house. We decided I would move in temporarily while I got back on my feet. See, I had been living across the country for the past 5 years, working as a freelance graphic designer. When Mom got sick, I dropped everything and moved back home to take care of her during her final months. I used up all my savings, lost most of my clients, and basically put my entire life on hold. Marcus, on the other hand, had stayed in town, worked his way up to regional manager at a car dealership, and seemed to have his life together. He was married to his college girlfriend Jessica, they had a nice apartment downtown, and he always acted like he was the responsible one between us. The plan was simple. I would live in Mom's house, pay the utilities and basic maintenance, while I rebuilt my design business and figured out my next steps. Marcus would handle the legal stuff since he was always better with paperwork and official matters. We would eventually decide together what to do with the house long term. Maybe sell it and split the proceeds, or maybe I would buy him out if my business took off. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. I was slowly getting back into the groove of work, picking up new clients, and honestly, being in Mom's house was helping me process my grief. I would sit in her favorite chair in the living room, surrounded by her photos and her books, and I felt close to her again. But then things started changing with Marcus. It began with small comments. He would stop by randomly, and make remarks about how I was living there rent-free while he was paying for his own place. He would criticize how I was maintaining the house, even though I was keeping it spotless and handling all the repairs myself. He started acting like he was doing me this huge favor by letting me stay there. I tried to brush it off. Grief affects everyone differently, and I figured he was just processing Mom's death in his own way. Maybe he resented that I got to live in the house full of memories while he was stuck in some sterile apartment. I even offered to pay him rent, but he said that was not necessary and that we were family. Then came the night that changed everything. I was in my makeshift home office, which was actually Mom's old sewing room, working on a logo design for a local restaurant. It was around 9 in the evening when I heard Marcus's key in the front door. He had kept his key from when Mom was alive, and we had agreed he could come by whenever he needed to get something or just spend time in the house. But this visit felt different. I could hear him stomping around downstairs, opening and closing cabinets, moving things around. When I came downstairs to say hello, I found him in the kitchen with a bunch of papers spread across Mom's dining table. He looked up at me with this expression I had never seen before, cold, calculating, almost hostile. He said he needed to talk to me about the house situation. I sat down, thinking maybe he had found some old documents of Mom's, or maybe there were tax issues we needed to address. Instead, he slid a piece of paper across the table toward me. It was a rental agreement. Marcus told me that he had been doing some research, and that since the house was technically still going through probate, and since he was the executor of Mom's estate, I was basically a tenant living there illegally. He said that for everything to be above board, I needed to start paying market rate rent immediately. The number on that rental agreement was astronomical, nearly 3 times what similar places in our area were going for. I stared at the paper, trying to process what was happening. This was not the conversation we had agreed to have about the house. This was not the plan we had made together. I asked him what was really going on, and that's when everything came pouring out. Marcus started yelling about how I had always been Mom's favorite, how I got to swoop in at the last minute and play the devoted daughter while he had been there the whole time. He said I was a failure who could not even keep a real job, that I was living like some teenager in Mom's house while he was out there being a responsible adult. He said I had exactly 30 days to either sign the rental agreement or get out. I was devastated. This was not just about money or housing. This felt like my brother was rejecting me completely, dismissing everything I had sacrificed to care for our dying mother. I tried to reason with him, reminded him of all the times I had been there for him growing up, all the support I had given him over the years. But Marcus was done listening. He gathered up his papers, told me I was pathetic for trying to guilt-trip him, and said that if I did not like his terms, I could find somewhere else to live. After he left that night, I called my best friend Maya, sobbing uncontrollably. Maya had been my rock throughout Mom's illness and death, and she knew better than anyone how much I had sacrificed to be there for our family. When I told her what Marcus had done, there was a long silence on the phone before she exploded with fury. Maya suggested I get my own lawyer to review the estate documents, but I was terrified of starting a family war. This was my brother, the only family I had left. Despite how cruel he had been, I kept hoping we could work things out. I spent the next week trying desperately to reach Marcus, but he would not return my calls. When I went to his workplace, he told his colleagues he was in meetings. I even tried reaching out to Jessica, but she told me this was between Marcus and me and that I should focus on getting my life together instead of expecting handouts. That conversation with Jessica made me realize this was not some emotional outburst from Marcus. This was coordinated. They had discussed this and decided I was expendable. The isolation was overwhelming. I started questioning everything. Had Marcus always resented me this much? Was I really the failure he claimed I was? One night, I found a photo from my high school graduation with Marcus's arm around my shoulders, looking genuinely proud. Mom had written on the back, "My two amazing kids, so different but both so special." I realized the Marcus who had threatened to evict me was not the same person in that photo, and I needed to stop hoping I could love him back to being the brother I remembered. That's when I made the decision to take Maya's advice and consult with a lawyer. I found an attorney named David Chen who specialized in estate law. When I explained the situation, David asked to see all the paperwork Marcus had given me, plus any documents I had about Mom's will and estate. What David found changed everything. First, he explained that Marcus's rental agreement had no legal standing whatsoever. The house was indeed still in probate, but that did not make me an illegal tenant. As one of the beneficiaries, I had every right to live there, especially since Marcus and I had a documented agreement about the arrangement. But then David found something that made my blood run cold. Hidden in the stack of estate paperwork that Marcus had been handling was an eviction notice dated 6 weeks earlier. The bank was foreclosing on Mom's house because Marcus had not been paying the mortgage. Let me explain what this meant. When Mom got sick, Marcus had taken over handling her finances. He was supposed to be making the mortgage payments from Mom's account, but instead, he had been letting them accumulate. The house was 3 months behind on payments, and the bank had already started foreclosure proceedings. Marcus knew this. He had known it for weeks. And instead of telling me or trying to work together to solve the problem, he had decided to try to extract rent money from me while hiding the fact that we were about to lose the house entirely. David explained that Marcus was likely planning to collect rent from me right up until the sheriff showed up to evict us both. Then he could blame me for not paying enough rent to cover the mortgage, making me the villain while he walked away looking like the victim. I felt sick. This was not just betrayal. This was calculated cruelty designed to destroy me financially and emotionally. But David had a plan. He explained that since Marcus had been acting as executor and had hidden crucial information about the estate, we could petition the court to have him removed and hold him personally liable for the missed mortgage payments. We could also pursue him for fraud since he had attempted to collect rent under false pretenses. More immediately, we could expose his scheme in a way that would make it impossible for him to continue manipulating the situation. David suggested that we arrange for the sheriff's department to deliver the eviction notice directly to Marcus at his workplace, with copies sent to everyone involved in the estate proceedings. This would create an official record of his misconduct and force him to face the consequences of what he had been doing. The plan was perfect. We spent the next week gathering all the evidence, bank statements showing the missed payments, emails where Marcus had lied about the house's financial status, copies of the fraudulent rental agreement, everything. Then David contacted the sheriff's department and arranged for them to serve Marcus with official notice of his removal as executor, along with the foreclosure documents he had been hiding. The day it happened, I was not there to see it, but Maya's cousin works at the dealership where Marcus is employed, and she gave me all the details later that evening. It was a Tuesday afternoon around 2:30 when 2 sheriff's deputies walked into the showroom of Premium Auto Sales where Marcus worked as regional manager. The dealership was busy that day. There were several customers browsing cars, a few salespeople working deals, and Marcus was in the middle of showing a luxury SUV to a young couple who looked like serious buyers. Maya's cousin said the deputies were professional but firm. They approached the receptionist, showed their badges, and asked to speak with Marcus Thompson regarding official legal business. The receptionist, clearly flustered, called Marcus over the intercom, and you could see him freeze when he heard that law enforcement was there to see him. Marcus excused himself from his customers and walked over to the front desk, trying to maintain his composure. But Maya's cousin said you could see the panic in his eyes even from across the showroom. The deputies identified themselves, confirmed his identity, and then served him with a thick stack of legal papers while his boss, his colleagues, and several customers watched the entire scene unfold. Marcus tried to play it off like it was some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. He made some comment about how there must be confusion with some paperwork, laughing nervously while he flipped through the documents. But when he saw what the papers actually said, the court order removing him as executor, the foreclosure notice he had been hiding, the fraud allegations, Maya's cousin said his face went completely white. His hands started shaking and he looked like he might actually faint. He mumbled something about needing to make a phone call and walked outside to his car. Maya's cousin said he sat in the driver's seat for at least 20 minutes, just staring at the papers, occasionally putting his head in his hands. Other employees were watching through the windows, whispering among themselves about what could possibly be going on. When Marcus finally came back inside, his boss immediately pulled him into the office. Maya's cousin could not hear the conversation, but she said it was clear that having sheriff's deputies show up to serve legal papers at work reflects very poorly on the dealership's reputation. Marcus was in that office for over an hour, and when he came out, he looked completely defeated. Later that week, Maya's cousin overheard Marcus explaining to his boss that he was involved in a family estate dispute and that there had been some complications with financial management. He tried to downplay it, but his boss was clearly not satisfied with vague explanations about why law enforcement was serving fraud-related papers to one of his managers. The whole thing became office gossip within hours. Maya's cousin said people were speculating about everything from tax evasion to embezzlement, and Marcus went from being the confident, successful regional manager to being the guy everyone whispered about when he walked by. But the story gets even better. Within hours of being served, Marcus was calling me nonstop. When I finally answered, he was practically hyperventilating, demanding to know what I had done and insisting that I was destroying our family. I told him very calmly that I had simply made sure the truth came to light. I explained that I knew about the hidden eviction notice, the missed mortgage payments, and his plan to scam rent money from me while the house was being foreclosed. Marcus tried to deny everything at first, then tried to blame me for not contributing enough to the household expenses, then finally broke down and admitted that he had been in financial trouble and had been using Mom's mortgage money to cover his own debts. Turns out, Marcus's perfect life was not so perfect after all. He had been gambling online for the past year, had racked up significant credit card debt, and had been slowly draining Mom's accounts to cover his losses. When I moved into the house, he saw an opportunity to collect rent money while also avoiding responsibility for the mortgage he could not afford to pay. His plan was to let the house go into foreclosure, blame me for not paying enough rent, and then use the rental money he collected for me to disappear before anyone realized what had happened. Learning this made me realize that Marcus's cruelty toward me was not really about grief or resentment. It was about his own guilt and desperation. He had been stealing from our dying mother, and when he got caught in an impossible situation, he decided to sacrifice me rather than face the consequences of his actions. The legal proceedings took about 6 weeks to resolve. David worked tirelessly to untangle the mess Marcus had created, and I learned more about estate law and fraud prosecution than I ever wanted to know. David was able to work with the bank to restructure the mortgage payments. Because Marcus had been acting fraudulently as executor, and because I could demonstrate I had been living in the house in good faith, the bank agreed to work with us rather than proceed with foreclosure. They required a significant down payment to catch up the missed payments, plus penalties and legal fees. David helped me secure a small loan using some of Mom's remaining assets as collateral. It was risky, but it was the only way to save the house that held so many precious memories. Since Marcus was removed as executor, I became responsible for managing Mom's estate. This was overwhelming at first, but it was also healing. For the first time since Mom's death, I felt like I was truly honoring her memory. We did end up losing some equity in the house due to Marcus's missed payments and legal fees. The house that should have been worth about $180,000 was now burdened with about $40,000 in debt and penalties. It was a substantial loss, but compared to losing the house entirely, it felt like a victory. Marcus was ordered by the court to pay restitution for the money he had stolen from the estate, approximately $28,000 that he had diverted from Mom's mortgage payments to cover his gambling debts. He was also hit with additional penalties for attempting to defraud me with a fake rental agreement, bringing his total financial obligation to just over $35,000. The court also issued a restraining order preventing Marcus from coming to the property or contacting me directly about estate matters. All future communication had to go through our lawyers, which was exactly what I needed to heal and move forward. But the consequences for Marcus extended far beyond the legal penalties. The most satisfying part, in a bitter way, was that Marcus's employer found out about the financial misconduct and terminated his employment. Apparently, someone in a position of trust handling large financial transactions cannot have recent fraud charges on their record, regardless of whether they are family-related. The dealership's insurance and bonding requirements made it impossible for them to keep Marcus in his management position. Marcus tried to find another job in auto sales, but word travels fast in our small town's business community. Maya's cousin said that potential employers would call his former boss for references, and when they heard about the fraud charges and the sheriff's deputies showing up at work, they would suddenly become much less interested in hiring him. Jessica left him about a month later when the full extent of his gambling problem and debt came to light. During the legal proceedings, we discovered that Marcus had not only stolen from Mom's estate, but had also been hiding significant credit card debt from Jessica. He had been gambling online almost daily for over a year, losing thousands of dollars that Jessica knew nothing about. When Jessica found out that Marcus had been using their joint credit cards to fund his gambling habit and that their savings account had been depleted to cover his losses, she filed for divorce immediately. She also revealed that Marcus had been pressuring her to take out a second mortgage on their apartment to give him cash for what he claimed were investment opportunities. The divorce was messy and public. Jessica's lawyer subpoenaed Marcus's financial records as part of the proceedings, which meant that his gambling addiction and the estate fraud became part of the court record. In a small town like Cedar Falls, that kind of scandal does not stay secret for long. As for our relationship, Marcus and I have not spoken since this all went down. He sent me one text message about 2 weeks after the legal proceedings concluded, calling me vindictive and saying I had ruined his life. The message was long and rambling, full of accusations about how I had always been jealous of his success, how I had manipulated the situation to steal his inheritance, how Mom would be ashamed of what I had done to her son. I stared at that text message for a long time before deleting it without responding. There was nothing I could say that would penetrate the wall of denial and self-pity he had built around himself. He was still the victim in his own mind, still refusing to take responsibility for the choices that had led to his downfall. The truth is, I feel sad about losing my brother, but I do not feel guilty about protecting myself from his manipulation. The grief of losing Marcus feels different from the grief of losing Mom. With Mom, I mourn someone who had loved me unconditionally, someone whose death left a hole in my life that could never be filled. With Marcus, I mourn the loss of someone who had never really existed in the first place, the brother I thought I knew, the family relationship I thought we had. He made a series of choices that hurt our family, stole from our dying mother, and tried to destroy me to cover up his own mistakes. The consequences he faced were the direct result of his own actions, not my vindictiveness. I simply refused to be his victim, and that refusal forced him to face the reality of what he had become. I still live in Mom's house, and I have been able to rebuild my design business successfully. It took longer than I initially hoped. The stress of the legal battle and the emotional trauma of Marcus's betrayal affected my creativity and my confidence for months. But slowly, client by client, Project by project, I rebuilt my professional reputation and my financial stability. The house feels peaceful now, without the constant tension and manipulation that Marcus brought into it. I have made some changes. Repainted the living room in colors Mom always wanted to try, but never got around to. Converted Marcus's old bedroom into a proper design studio. Planted a memorial garden in the backyard with Mom's favorite flowers. Sometimes I catch myself listening for Marcus's key in the front door, or expecting him to call on Mom's birthday or the anniversary of her death. Old habits die hard, and despite everything he did, he was still my brother for 31 years. That history does not disappear just because someone betrays you. Sometimes I wonder if we could have worked things out differently if Marcus had been honest with me from the beginning about his financial problems and his gambling addiction. Maybe we could have found a solution together. Maybe I could have helped him get treatment before his addiction destroyed his life and his marriage. Maybe Mom's house could have been the bridge that helped us both heal instead of the battleground that tore us apart forever. But then I remember the look in his eyes that night when he called me a failure and tried to scam me out of money while our mother's house was being foreclosed on. That was not someone reaching out for help. That was someone willing to destroy me to save himself. That was someone who had already decided that my well-being was expendable if it served his purposes. I learned something important through this whole experience. Sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the deepest betrayal, but that does not mean we have to accept being victimized by them. Standing up for yourself is not vindictive. It is necessary for your survival and your sanity. And sometimes, when someone is determined to destroy you, the best thing you can do is make sure the truth comes to light and let their own actions speak for themselves. You do not have to destroy them in return. Their own choices will do that just fine. I also learned that family is not just about blood relationships. Maya, who stayed up with me through countless nights of tears and panic attacks, who helped me find a lawyer when I was too overwhelmed to think straight, who celebrated every small victory in the legal battle. She is more family to me than Marcus ever was. David, my lawyer, who treated me with respect and fought for my rights when my own brother was trying to cheat me. He showed me more loyalty in 6 weeks than Marcus had shown in years. Today, I am rebuilding my life in Mom's house, surrounded by her memory and her love, and I am grateful every day that I had the courage to fight for what was right instead of letting my brother's cruelty define my future. The house is not just a place to live anymore. It is a symbol of my strength, my refusal to be victimized, and my commitment to honoring Mom's memory in a way that she would be proud of. I have started volunteering with a local organization that helps people navigate estate disputes and elder financial abuse. Sharing my story and my hard-won knowledge feels like a way to turn my trauma into something useful, something that can help other people avoid the pain I went through. If you are dealing with family manipulation or betrayal, please remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and honesty, even by the people who are supposed to love you most. Sometimes protecting yourself means accepting that you cannot save someone who is determined to destroy themselves, and that is okay. You are not responsible for fixing other people's bad choices, even when those people are your family. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Get professional help when you are dealing with legal or financial issues that are beyond your expertise. Document everything. And remember that choosing your own well-being over someone else's manipulation is not selfish, it is survival. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone else who might be going through something similar. You are stronger than you think, and you deserve better than being someone else's victim.